with Graveyard Weeds and Wolfsbane Seeds. A Halloween trick-or-treat by Shannon McGuire. In the small town of Holston, Oregon, sits an abandoned mansion called the Holston House. The house is eerily well maintained considering it has been sat empty for many years. There are rumors that the Holston's youngest child, Mary, still walks the halls looking for someone to play with her. It's Halloween night, both in the small town of Holston and right here where we are. Hey, how convenient is that? It's Halloween night, and a group of teenagers, including a girl named Emily, decide to break into the house. Oh, this should end well, I think, don't you? It's Halloween, Mary told Cook while Cook boiled caramel and dipped apples and laid them on the table to dry, buttery and glistening in their new candy shells. Cook smiled indulgently and gave Mary a ball of caramel to play between her fingers and shoot her out of the kitchen. It's Halloween, Mary told Mr. Evans, the gardener, while he stuffed old clothes with hay and sticks and raised his new-formed scarecrows onto their stands, propping them up on the ground like watchful sentinels. Mr. Evans smiled at little Mary, not quite as indulgently as Cook, and gave Mary a stick and some string to tie around it and shoot her out of the garden. It's Halloween, Mary told Mr. Blake, the coachman, while he oiled the hinges on the front gate so they would creak like such and not like so when the trick-or-treaters came to call. Mr. Blake smiled coolly and gave Mary an old horseshoe, heavy and red with streaks of rust like drying blood, and shooed her away from the gate back toward the house. It's Halloween, Mary told herself, caramel and rust streaking her fingers, the stick shoved lengthwise into her hair so her ponytail held it in place, high and bobbing bright in the autumn wind. Atop the house, crows called their delighted calls into the air, and a curtain swayed, pulled aside, and let go by an unseen hand. Delighted with herself, with the world around her, Mary tucked the horseshoe into her pocket and raced on. Now, growing up in the shadow of Holston House means growing up understanding why people believe in ghosts. Believing in ghosts yourself is purely optional, of course, which is a good thing, because nobody's going to convince me that some peeping Casper is hanging around to watch me get undressed at the end of the school day. Dead is dead. Dead moves on. But the Holston House, it makes you understand why people would believe, why they might even want to believe. It should have fallen down a long time ago. For one thing, it's older than any other house in town, built when this was nothing but pastoral fields, evergreen woods, and horse farms for rich people. The Holstons had a bunch of money by old-timey standards, and to hear people who knew them before they died out, it was a lot of money by modern standards, too. You know, the kind of money that sees a pretty field and says, I should build a giant mansion there for no good reason, just because I want to. I shouldn't be too hard on them, dead old rich people that they are. This town exists because they built here. In case the name wasn't clue enough, Holston, Oregon, a nice place to live. The motto's not wrong. It is nice here. No crimes, no drugs, nothing beyond a little teenage mischief that never seems to outlast high school. It's so nice it makes me sick sometimes, like it doesn't leave room for anything else. Guess old man Holston got what he wished for when he chose that motto. It's the rest of us who didn't have a choice. When rich people decide they need to build a house, they also decide they need to buy food and clothes and entertainment and all sorts of other good things that make a house a home. So people followed them, one after the other, and then those people built shops to sell their stuff out of, and they built houses to keep their stuff in, and eventually they turned around and went, dang, I guess we live here now. And the Holstons loomed above it all in their ridiculous nightmare house. Its black iron grillwork, its red brick facades, and when they started dying, everyone sort of shrugged and figured they'd brought it on themselves with building a house that looked like it belonged in a Gothic romance. The last members of that family died long before I was born, but I still know them. Everyone knows them. You can't grow up here and not know them because dying wasn't enough to make them leave. You see, they died too fast, some sort of disease that started with the youngest daughter and swept through the rest of them like a wildfire. They didn't change their wills. They didn't dissolve the trust that was supposed to make sure that hard times for any specific member of the family wouldn't deprive the rest of them of their precious ancestral home. No, No one can buy that house. No one can sell it. No one can demolish it. When it falls down, which it will someday, everything falls down someday, then we'll be able to clear the land and reclaim it for city use. So far, the annual inspections have failed to find anything, not even water subsidence, whatever they call it, in the foundation. The place is in perfect shape, especially when you consider that it's been standing empty and unattended for 70 years. Deer crop the grass so short that it looks mowed. It's nice to see the fawns wandering around, I suppose. Rain washes the windows, and the wind blows the debris out of the gutters. At least that's what they say. It's enough to make you understand why people believe in ghosts, which, supposedly, the house has. Mary Holston, the youngest girl, the one who got sick first. They say she still walks the halls, lonely, looking for someone to play with her. Forever. Well, it's also enough to make the place a beacon for bored teenagers on a Halloween night, like the lone candle lit in the middle of a swarm of moths. We don't have anything else to do out here in the sticks, and the adults have made it clear that while vandalism is a no-no, they don't patrol the grounds of the Holston house. If they leave it to our devices for long enough, we might be able to bring the whole thing down. Yeah, probably not, though. It's going to outlast me, that's for certain. It's going to outlast all of us. Well, except for maybe little Mary Holston, with her ghostly garden growing in the shadows of the house where she died. We gathered outside the gates, a motley gang of bored kids who wanted the opportunity to smash things without anyone catching on. There was Elisa, with her spray paint and her bubble gum and her yellow hair and her tight black jeans, which always seemed like an invitation to stare and then feel bad about it later. Chuck, whose backpack bristled with eggs and jars of liquid that I could smell from where I stood, vicious and nasty. Iko. Oh, Iko, with her baseball hat and her scowl that dared any of us to say a thing about it. Tyler, who never wanted to talk much, but who could chuck a chunk of masonry with an artist's skill, taking out windows from 20 feet away. We greeted each other with nods and gruff insults, trying to, seem cool, trying to seem casual, trying to seem like our hearts weren't pounding and our skins weren't too tight, like costumes we'd already outgrown. Well, or maybe that was just me. Elisa had never given any sign that she cared what people thought of her. Chuck's father actually liked bailing him out of trouble, like he was reliving his own chaotic teen years, one crushed mailbox, one egged house at a time. Iko hated everyone, including her best friends. And Tyler. Tyler. Sometimes I thought Tyler was hoping we'd get into the kind of trouble that ended up with us being sent to juvie for a nice long stretch. Not hoping hard enough that he was willing to go out and start something on his own, but hoping anyway. Emily, said Iko in a voice like a razor blade, you're late. I was getting supplies. I held up my backpack. She looked at it with dull disinterest. Matches, a glass cutter, the good stuff. Why would we need a glass cutter? Asked Tyler. Because if we can't get into the house before someone calls the cops on us, we could find better stuff, I said. He thought about it for a moment and then nodded. Heh, yeah, cool. That the cops would be called was a foregone conclusion. We knew that, even with the adults turning a blind eye to our nocturnal activities, as long as we were just participating in the town tradition of trying to trash the Holston place, someone would eventually hear glass shattering or smell smoke and decided we needed to be curtailed, lest we get so excited that we started trashing a house people actually cared about. Teenagers were wild animals, well, at least in the eyes of the adults who pretended to care about us. We had to be controlled, or else we would run rampant. Elisa popped her gum. How we getting in? Bolt cutters, said Chuck, pulling them out of his backpack and brandishing them like a sword. Elisa clapped her hands. Even Tyler smiled. Iko turned to frown at the chain gates, brow furrowing. You see that? See what? Someone. She paused and shook her head. Nothing, just a trick of the light. Come on, let's get this party started. The end of the world is probably going to begin with those 5 words. Let's get this party started. Just once. I wish someone would say, let's not. Just once. It's Halloween, whispered the wind through the eaves, blowing against the pressing dark of the October night. It carried dust and fallen leaves, and as it blew, it left them tangled in the cobwebs, knocking the spiders from their holes, sending them tumbling down to the tangled overgrowth of the flower beds like fat black raindrops. Halloween! Hooted the owl in the trees at the back of the property, wings mantled and yellow eyes wide, alert, staring at the house. It flexed its talons against the branch that bore splintering wood and bark alike, and when it launched itself into the air, it made no sound, but soared as soundlessly as a shadow. It's Halloween, breathed Mary, nose pressed to the glass of her bedroom window, eyes fixed on the figures coming through the gate. 5 of them this year. 5 trick-or-treaters coming to play with her, to be her friends. And maybe even if she was very, very good and very, very lucky, and if they were very, very clever this year, just maybe they would stay a while. Oh, how she hoped that they would stay for a while. It's Halloween, Mary repeated, hugged herself tight, watching her new friends come. You know, as I listened to Mary's voice saying, it's Halloween, it sounds an awful lot like me. All day. Yeah. This was the closest any of us had ever been to the Holston house. We were silent for a long while before Tyler finally voiced what we'd all been feeling. There's something creepy going on here. I don't like it. Ika, where is a Kit Kat, stopped and looked at him. What do you mean? She asked. Tyler gave her a challenging look. You can't tell me you don't see it too. I didn't say I didn't see it. I want to know what you see. The house, he pointed. This thing is what, 1,000,000 years old? Older than my house anyway. My house has peel and paint in the corners, and the gutters always have a half a ton of leaves in them. This place, look at it. There isn't a broken window. There isn't even any graffiti. Look at it. How can this place be in such good shape and nobody takes care of it? When other kids do what we're going to do every year. He's got a point, I said slowly. I tried not to squirm as their eyes turned toward me. Their combined gaze seemed to have a palpable weight, like a shroud. Did any of you come out here last year? Yeah, the read-along text might be a bit different than we're reading it. Did any of you come out here last year? I asked them. One by one, my friends answered in the negative. Tyler had been running with a different crew then and had spent the night egging cars from the overpass. Elisa had been out of town following a little incident with the girl across the street. Iko had been in New York visiting family. Chuck had been in some unspecified somewhere else and refused to say more than that. I frowned. Okay, so, I mean, how do we know that anyone has actually done this before? What do you mean? Asked Chuck. Maybe they were all lying to make themselves sound braver. It was a believable theory. Most of the kids who claimed to have thrown a rock or taken a swing at the Holston house were milquetoasts. You know, the kind of people who cared more about homework than hooliganism. The real troublemakers always seemed to find something else to do when Halloween rolled around. I mean, if the real troublemakers actually even existed. I frowned, trying to find a face to put to that label. I could summon the vague image of a skulking gang of older teens in ripped jeans and leather jackets hanging out behind the school and trying to look tough enough to take on the entire world. But it seemed like I'd never actually, seen them. Only sketched the shadow cast by things they had supposedly done. It was weird. Maybe they skip class a lot. I shook my head to chase my lingering unease away and turned to Chuck. Cut it, I said. Huh, who died put you in charge? He asked. But he clipped the chain anyway. I fell to the driveway with a muffled clink, metal striking stone, and the gates, freed from the tension that had been holding them in place, swung majestically open. Now the hinges didn't creak so much as sigh, soft and distant and weary. It was like this was a place where rust never dared to grow, where, I don't know, time itself played by different rules. We moved closer together without discussing it, taking a little thin comfort from the proximity of people we were sure of. These weren't the distant shadows of bad kids we were trying so hard to emulate, to grow up to become like them. They were my friends, assuming I could honestly claim to have anything of the sort. These were the people I had chosen to have my back while I rode off to become a A Halloween legend. It's open, said Eliza, popped another bubble. The sound was sharp and bright and somehow pink and gooey around the edges. Only Eliza's gum could sound like that. So, who goes in first? What, are you scared? Tyler swaggered forward, passing through the gate and only stopping when he was easily 10 feet onto the Holston property. He turned to look over his shoulder, smirking, more for Eliza's benefit than for the rest of us put together, I was sure. Yeah, everyone knew Tyler was sweet on Eliza, just like everyone knew Eliza would never do a thing to encourage him. Near as anyone could tell, Eliza was attracted to bubblegum, spray paint, and Eliza. Slowly, the rest of us followed Tyler right on through. Eliza paused to produce a can of red paint from her bag and shake it to life, eyeing the wall around the gate with hungry eyes. Yeah. You go on ahead, she said. I'm going to make sure anybody else who comes looking for a little Halloween fun knows they didn't get here first. You want to look out? Asked Tyler eagerly. A little too eagerly. Eliza treated him to a withering look. Go play, little boy, she said. Maybe if you're fast, you can trick-or-treat at the big house before the candy runs out. And then Eliza turned back to her wall, giving the can another shake, eyes far away, already picturing the masterpiece she was going to put there. Tyler muttered something nasty under his breath as he slogged down the driveway toward the rest of us. Chuck gave him a sympathetic look. Aiko did nothing of the kind. Her attention was reserved for the house, taking in the undented wood and the undamaged windows with an artist's eye. And she was an artist, as were we all. Only our mediums differed. Eliza was a painter. Chuck was a performance artist of a kind. Tyler was a dancer. Me, I liked to play the changes. I was a jazz musician with a hammer or any blood instrument in my hand. Aiko was a sculptor. And to her, the house might as well have been an untouched block of marble ready for the chisel. Let's go, she said. And her grin was a jack-o'-lantern carved out of the twilight, eerie and bright and flickering with fire. Sometimes the trick-or-treaters didn't reach the door. They got scared, was what Cook said. They couldn't handle the majesty of the grounds or the way the windows seemed to watch them. They didn't understand that the house was only ever wanted to make friends. Like Mary. Yes, little Mary Holston only ever wanted to make friends. Friends were important. It's Halloween, whispered Mary, shivering with delight, and stepped out of her room, space bending around her until she emerged through the wall to the side of the gate, passing easily through brick and mortar. The trick-or-treater who hadn't been able to make it to the house was standing at the wall, a canister in each hand, painting something wonderful over the brick. It was big and red and white and swirled like peppermint candy cane, sweetness and sharpness, waiting to cut the roof of the mouth when bitten into wrong. Mary clapped her little hands. What the freak? The trick-or-treater spun around, eyes wide, mouth hanging open. A wad of something pink fell out, landing on the driveway with a splat. Mary frowned. Littering is bad. You should pick that up. Mr. Evans says I'm not to litter the grounds, ever. Who the freak are you? Demanded the trick-or-treater. Mary was beginning to suspect that this was not a good friend for keeping. My name is Mary. Mary Holston. I live here. What's your name? No one lives here, kid. This is the Holston house. Yes, this is my house. The trick-or-treater stared at her, still not picking up the pink thing from the driveway. No way. You're dressed as Mary Holston? Your parents let you do that? Where are they? Is this some viral video crap? You shouldn't use that sort of language. It's not nice. Yeah, well, neither's dressing up like the dead kid who... The trick-or-treater kept talking, but Mary was not listening to the words anymore. They were bad words, wrong words, big, lying words that people were not supposed to use around her. She needed to make the trick-or-treater stop using those words. And so Mary did. And when she was done, when the screaming stopped and the trick-or-treater wasn't saying those nasty things anymore, Mary looked at the picture on the wall again, The candy cane swirls were gone. It was pink and yellow and sad, like a memento mori for something that should never have died here. Sighing, Mary stepped back into the wall. Maybe the others would be more fun. After a moment, the thing that had been Elisa climbed to its feet. It left the paint cans where they were as it stood there silently, waiting for the others to return. We all heard the scream. But when we turned to look, it was just Elisa out by the wall, which already bore the outline of another of her grandiose grotesqueries. I waved hesitantly. She waved back. Twit, muttered Tyler. Yeah, said Iko and eyed the door. Emily, you have the lockpicks. You want to let us in, or you want me to start bashing things? Somehow it was one of the most polite things that Iko had ever said to me. I stepped into position, pulling the picks from my pocket and getting to work. The Holstons had been rich enough to afford good locks, but technology marches on, and it had been a long time. I was expecting something tricky, but not impossible to pick. Just hard enough to make me look cool in front of my friends. They might never be impressed by me. I was too slow, too reluctant to smash things when I thought we might get caught, but I could get into places. And so they'd keep on keeping me around. As long as I was willing to open doors, I was part of their crew. Even here. The picks moved, the tumblers clicked, and half the time I'd been aiming for, the door was swinging open, revealing a hallway as clean as it was old-fashioned. I held my crouch for a moment, unable to shake the feeling that something about this was very, very wrong. We knew the quirks of architecture and the geography that allowed the Holston house to look so well maintained that even when no one was actually taking care of it. They taught those in school, using them as examples of outliers, but here. Were we supposed to believe the ravens flew down the chimney and swept the cobwebs away with their wings? Or the raccoons wandered the halls, accidentally dusting things with their tails, somehow not doing any damage in the process? Chuck whistled long and low. It's like a huge museum in here. I had to swallow the sudden urge to tell him not to talk so loud, not where the ghostly shadows cast by the moonlight flowing through the stained glass windows could hear us. Luckily, Tyler saved me the trouble, elbowing Chuck casually in the side. The bottles in Chuck's backpack jangled. Someone's trying to mess with us. They came, they cleaned the place up's what they did, and now they're going to jump out at us. Let's mess with them first. You do what you want, said Iko. Her eyes were on the great stained glass circle of the window at the top of the stairs. She'd been able to reach that easily with her bat if she climbed up there to meet it. What if the stairs are rotten and they collapse under you? I asked. Iko looked at me coolly, dismissively, the way she had looked at everything. Then I'll still get to smash something, she said. She walked away from us. Tyler whistled. Okay, forget Elisa. I'm in love. She's so out of your leg, boy. She is totally out of your league, said Chuck. She's out of everyone's league, said Tyler. I can hear you, said Iko, and climbed the stairs, the sound of laughter. Chuck hooked a thumb toward the nearby hall. Tyler nodded. Two of them skulked that way. I looked toward Iko, silhouetted against the big round window, and followed them away from the door, deeper into the house. The second trick-or-treater was in front of the star window with a stick in her hand when Mary stepped out of the wallpaper. Mary frowned. These were not good friends. These weren't even good trick-or-treaters. It was Halloween. Not one of them had said the words. It was like they didn't care. And if they didn't care, Mary was going to make them care. Breaking things is bad, she said primly. Iko shrieked, whirled, bat held defensively in front of her. She blinked when she saw Mary, a frown spreading across her face, wiping her terror away. You're just a kid. This is my house. It's Halloween. That means you don't need to be invited to come for trick-or-treat. But even uninvited, you're still supposed to act like a guest. Guests do not break things. Guests are polite. She took a step forward. Iko took a step back. The menace radiating off the child was like smoke, intangible but filling the air until her lungs ached and her head spun. Why do you want to break my things? It's Halloween. We're supposed to trick or treat. And treat, not break things that aren't ours. Kid, this window isn't yours. No one owns this house. I do, said Mary. Unlike Eliza, Aiko did not scream. Her baseball bat made a clunking sound when it fell from her fingers and rolled down the stairs. Her body was quieter when it hit the floor. Anyone looking closely at the great starscape of the stained glass window might have found the outline of a teenage girl etched out by distant points of light screaming forever. Oh, but they might not. It could easily be a trick of the shadows, after all. There was no single sound that caught my attention as Chuck and Tyler were setting up their bizarre Rube Goldberg machine of jarred smells and pilfered antique kitchenware, clearly intending to bring the whole thing crashing down as soon as they had it stacked to their satisfaction. My role in this construction project was simple. I was the one who picked the locks in the china cabinets and eased open the ancient cupboards, keeping the boys safe from spiders. For a couple of guys fixated on projecting their own version of aggressive, unrelenting masculinity, they sure were freaked out by spiders. But something was different. Some small, indefinable quality of the air around us had changed between one breath and the next, becoming raw and wrong and unwelcoming. I turned away from the boys, frowning, trying to decide what was bothering me. Tyler noticed, of course. Tyler paid too much attention to the wrong things and always had. What's the matter, Emily? You scared? Shut up, I replied genially. Just because Eliza doesn't want anything to do with you, that doesn't mean you have to be a jerk to me. Whatever, said Tyler, and added another jar to his stack. I turned to look back at the pair of them, frowning. These were my friends. These were the people out of all the entire school who I decided were worth impressing, worth spending time with. Sometimes I think most relationships are nothing more than a matter of stumbling from loneliness to loneliness until we find someone whose company is better than being alone and putting up with their worthless associates until we realize it's not worth it after all. I wanted to have friends. I wanted to have people who'd have my back if things went south, but somehow having friends always seemed to mean getting stuck with people who didn't really like me, and now I didn't really like either. I'm going to check on Aiko. You're a twit, said Tyler again. I whirled. I will shove one of Chuck's chemistry projects so far up your butt you'll be burping stink bombs till you turn 35, I snarled at him. His laughter followed me out of the kitchen, back down the hall toward where we had left Aiko. She wasn't my friend either, but at least she didn't go out of her way to insult me. Actually, she didn't go out of her way to do anything, good or bad, where I was concerned. Mostly, she looked at me like she was trying to figure out my deal. Like once she understood me, she could decide what she wanted to do about me. There was nothing cruel in Aiko's gaze. Cold, sure, but not cruel. Aiko's bat was lying at the bottom of the stairs. I stopped when I saw it, blinking, unable to quite process what I was seeing. Aiko carried that bat everywhere. She took it to class with her, and when new teachers objected, she'd go home and come back with a note from her parents explaining that her mental health was directly tied to her possession of the bat. Our school had a zero-tolerance policy for weapons, which meant if anyone came right out and said that she could beat someone with that, they ran the risk of doing away with the entire baseball team in the process. Aiko was clever. She knew where the cracks in the rules were, and she knew how to exploit them. And so, why was Aiko's baseball bat lying on the floor? Slowly I bent and picked it up. I'd never actually touched it before, and on some level I was surprised when I was able to. It should have been like, I don't know, Thor's hammer, too heavy for a mere mortal like me to lift. It should have burned my hand. Instead, it was just an ordinary bat with an ordinary weight, worn smooth by Aiko's skin. Aiko? I called. There was no reply. Step by step, slowly I turned. Inch by inch, I climbed the stairs, moving toward the stained glass windows, which wasn't broken. It wasn't smashed. It wasn't even cracked. It showed a vast field of stars, silver and gold, against a background of blue, and it must have turned this hall into an eternal twilight when the sun came up. There was something strange about the way the stars were placed, like I don't know, they made some sort of picture I could almost, but not quite see. When I saw it was on the floor, I stopped looking at the window. Aiko was crumpled there, folded in on herself like a discarded doll, her face hidden behind the careless tangle of her hair. I ran to her side, dropping to my knees, shaking her. Aiko! Aiko! She was utterly unresponsive, recalling and strengthening my first impression that she was a child's plaything that had somehow displeased and been cast aside to be reclaimed later when the offense had faded. I rolled her onto her back. Her open eyes stared up at the ceiling, the black strands of her hair crossing her irises like cobwebs. I brushed them aside, unable to stand her fractured, unblinking gaze. But she wasn't dead. She was breathing shallowly, and her skin was soft and warm. She wasn't dead. She couldn't be dead. I had come here tonight looking for a little good old-fashioned mayhem, the sort of Halloween pranks that would make us legends at school and maybe, just maybe, bridge the difference between us, like making us the sort of gang that stuck together through thick and thin and not just when it was easy and convenient. I wanted that. I wanted it so badly I could almost taste it, like sugar on my tongue. There was a sound from the kitchen, then short and sharp, and the beginning and ending of screams compressed into a space too small to hold them. I didn't move. I closed my eyes and cradled Aiko close and wished I were strong enough to lift her up and carry her out of here, away from whatever haunted this place where the gutters never clogged and the floors never mildewed. Something was wrong with the Holston house. Something had always been wrong with the Holston house. For the first time, it occurred to me that there was a name for something shiny and untouched and perfect. A lure or a trap. Either would do. The adults we trusted, who were supposed to take care of us and protect us, they'd sent us here, hadn't they? Yes, the adults. They had talked about what a wonderful target this house was, how no one cared about it, how we could wreak whatever havoc we wanted without getting into trouble. The adults had set the bait, and we had snapped it up like animals, rushing out without stopping to wonder why generations of teens hadn't gotten here before us. There was a footstep behind me. The end. No, it's just another one of those phony ends. The last trick-or-treater had found one of her friends and was holding her, rocking her, the way Mama used to rock Mary before Mary had to go away. Mary paused. She didn't like remembering Mama, not really. Mama had gone outside the house before things had changed. And when they changed, Mama hadn't been able to find a way back in. Cook said it was because Mama had been outside the gates, and outside the gates was a different world. Miss Riven said it hadn't always been that way. Mr. Blake said Mama had done something when she realized things were going to change one way or the other, and that whatever she had done was the biggest trick and the biggest treat ever, because it was why they were able to stay here. Halloween after Halloween, no matter how much the world changed outside the gates, the Holston house would stand forever because Mama had known her little girl was dying, and Mama had wanted to give Mary a house to haunt. It's Halloween, said Mary finally to the last trick-or-treater. The girl raised her head and turned, spitting words over her shoulder like an angry cat. So whatever you're going to do it. Get it over with. Mary cocked her head to the side. This trick-or-treater didn't have anything she could use to hurt the house or break things. She'd opened the doors, but she had done it gently, kindly, doing no damage, leaving no mark behind. It was Halloween. It didn't matter that she didn't have an invitation. What mattered was that she had come, and Mary had been, oh, so very lonely. It's Halloween, Mary said again. Do you want a trick, or do you want a treat? The girl looked at Mary, said nothing, but there was hope in her eyes. Mary smiled. Mary took it. She says she's my sister now, and I guess she's going to keep saying it until I forget it isn't true. This is the Holston house, after all. There's nothing here but time. We stood by the bay window, watching as the people who had been my friends walked toward the gate where the girl who had been Eliza was waiting. They walked, they looked small, strangely naked without the paraphernalia of their mock wickedness. The house had swallowed it entire, along with whatever it had taken from them. Less, according to Mary, than it would have taken if I had not agreed to stay, more than it would have taken if they'd listened to the things no one was saying and chosen to stay away. Yes, my friends, they'd be good now. Good like the older teens, the ones we'd always been puzzled by. The ones who should have destroyed the Holston house long before we'd had the chance to go there. The ones who'd met Mary, who'd become her treats when she saw the tricks they were trying to play. Maybe this is the last time. Maybe next year, when Halloween comes, I'll be able to warn the naughty ones away. Be able to tell them to go and throw eggs at some other, lesser house. One that's a little less protected, a little less aware. Maybe I can save them. Or maybe they'll find my body, the only thing allowed to decay in this haunted, hallowed place now, dissolving into dust at the top of the stairs. Maybe they'll meet Mary, enjoying the holiday highlight of her year, trading tricks for treats for the whole town to enjoy. Yes, Holston, Oregon is a nice place to live. Its founders, what remains of them, make sure of that. It's Halloween, whispered Mary, slipping her insubstantial hand into mine and held me tight. She says she's my sister now. Give us enough time, it'll be true. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? I didn't mean to ask the question. I asked it anyway. She looked up at me and smiled. With graveyard weeds and wolfsbane seeds and empty graves all in a row. It's Halloween. Yes, I said. And the night went on around us, and the night would never end.